In 2020, some protesters called for elected officials to reallocate 50 million in law enforcement funding elsewhere. The city council responded by cutting 15 million, and then an additional 12 million was cut due to pandemic-caused economic shortfalls. As a result, school resource officers, transit police, and gun violence reduction team were disbanded. In 2021, November in particular, the City Council unanimously passed the fall bump, which is the budget monitoring process. Whoo, got that right? Which includes increasing the current 230 million of our police budget. So just again, our budget is 230 million by an additional 5.2 million. In a recently settled contract with the Portland Police Association, the city agreed to increase officer pay and benefits while committing, in spite of community demands, to hire even more police officers. So the question I have for all of you, and I'm going to kick it to Chad first, is what is your response to the 2021 November vote? And do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and reinvesting those dollars in non-police solutions to public safety?
No, I do not. I disagree. I do not think that cutting any of the Portland Police Bureau budget is a good idea in any way. So we took away $15 million. We see what's going on now, a year after they've taken that away, how much gun violence has gone up, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So I think we've proven to the community that when you take away from the police, this is what happens. You get more violence. Personally, I spent 8.5 years as a volunteer firefighter, and just recalling what the things that I seen, what I went through. I see young people killed in car accidents. I've seen people. I had a gentleman that was decapitated. Just being the first responder that goes to that situation. And the feelings and the emotions that you go through when you're put in that spot, we all should be thinking about the police department and all of our other first responders, like the situations that they are being forced to be put into. They gotta have some sort of wind down time and time for themselves, and we have to be able to offer better situations or more like mental help to our first responders. So pulling budgets away, that's what you're really doing, is you're pulling away from them for, the more you pull from them, the more overtime they have to work, and things like that, where you're taking that, you're keeping them in that bad mental state all the time. So I believe in funding more, so that way we can have more services for our first responders and stuff like that. Like I said, just trying to project yourself into their situation. If you're a police officer and you're working on a daily basis with criminals, you're going to get in that paranoid state and feel like you're always continuously around criminals. So like I said, having more funding and being able to separate and provide more services to our first responders and treating them with the respect that they deserve. I do know that I've made friends with a few police officers here in Portland, and the first thing they bring to my attention is that they feel like they're treated like dogs by the leaders of the city, and then let alone being treated horribly by the community, So I would think that putting more money into the bureaus for police and other first responders would be our first step.
I have a quick follow-up for you. I have a few more seconds left. I'm curious, does your analysis change at all, knowing that with those cuts that happened in 2020, it wasn't that we actually fired those police officers. Right. So we didn't actually lose any of the force. Most of those positions that were cut were empty. They couldn't fill them prior to. So I'm curious, does that change at all, or you still are tying very clearly the violence that we're seeing to the budget?
Right, and I think that we're losing police officers because of the way they're being treated. So if the city leaders are treating them like dogs and cutting them down and blaming them for everything that's going on, you're going to have more of them retire. You're going to have more of them quit. You're going to have new officers not coming to be hired here in Portland. So we as a city are pushing qualified officers, good officers away, and we're basically pushing away the good ones and pulling in the trash that shouldn't be on the force at all. You know what I mean? The racist bigots that we rarely get. You know, and then when we do get them, we're just adding to it. You know, we're like their mental state is just out of control, resulting in the crimes that they're committing themselves.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. I'm going to pass it to Commissioner Hardesty. What is your response to the 2021 November vote? Do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and investing those dollars in non-police solutions to public safety?
What a great question. As you may know, I supported $6 million being invested in non-police related violence reduction programs in the last budget process, because what I know is that police alone do not stop violence from taking place. In addition to doing work with PBOT, I believe Portland Street Response is going to be a wonderful response to reduce violence on our streets in the community. I brought this because this is the current proposed police budget, and we're in the middle of the budget process right now. And when you look at what the police are asking for, they're asking for a small fortune. But what isn't reflected in this budget is the reality of where we are. And the reality of where we are is the DOJ is demanding that we do an audit of police actions in 2020, that we do an audit of supervisors and how they have lacked holding police accountable when they are aggressively over-policing certain communities. We also just hired a civilian training dean. For 20 years, I've been saying, if we're going to have community police officers, we need community and police training together. We can't train police as paramilitary occupiers and expect them to come into our community and sing Kumbaya with community members, right? And so the good news is that while we're doing this, I'm also helping with the RFP request for proposal right now for a truth and reconciliation process with the community and with the police. We cannot add people into this toxic environment that we have, that's our police bureau today, until we get that civilian training dean on board and review training curriculum, because you've all seen a slideshow where people were annoyed at 129. I was annoyed from 1 to 129, because what that slideshow showed is that all the bad people were black and brown and all the good people were white, right? And if we're still training police that way 30 years later, I have worked with 12 police chiefs and 6 police commissioners in my time, so I'm not new to this. I know what the police say as excuses, but I follow the facts. And as the DOJ has said, the facts tell us that we don't have a police force that treats everyone equally, and until we do that, I don't want to bring people into a toxic system. But I am doing a summer jobs program with first responder bureaus to bring 30 young people in and have them not pick a bureau, but rotate through all the first responder bureaus. I know at 16 or 17, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I don't want to force kids into a little box, but I want to expose them to these living wage employment opportunities while we're rebuilding a police force that actually we all trust and respect and will serve us all equally.
Thank you. I have a quick follow-up question for you. You talked quite a bit around that November vote, and thank you for that background about the settlement, the DOJ. And quickly, before I get to my question, do you have a second to tell folks and the viewers kind of what was that settlement?
Yes.
Just really brief, yeah.
Back in 2008, we invited the DOJ, the Albino Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, and I was part of that group, invited the DOJ to come to town and investigate what was happening to black men and boys at the hands of Portland police. You may remember Keaton Otis, Aaron Campbell, Kendra James. It was just a very short period of time where lots of black Portlanders were experiencing death at the hands of Portland police. So the DOJ came, they did an analysis, and they kind of did a bait and switch and actually addressed people with mental health issues, right? But we know today we still kill more people with mental health issues than we did prior to inviting the DOJ to come to town, which is why creating Portland Street Response was so important, that we just don't send armed people, right? So the DOJ, because of the outrageous behavior of the Portland Police Bureau in the summer of 2020, has found us out of compliance, and so they have given us very specific things that as a city we must do, right? So even though the mayor is taking credit for the civilian training dean, it was the DOJ that's requiring it, yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
My last question for you really quickly, I might have missed it, so can you remind us that second part of the question? I'm guessing, but I don't want to make any assumptions. Do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and reinvesting? You talked about that history that you have done that, but in the future, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, right now we don't know what the ideal Portland police force looks like, right? But what we do know is now that we're hiring PS3s, public safety threes, unarmed people to work within the Portland Police Bureau. Now that we have the Portland Street Response, now that we have a pilot program in fire with the CHAT program, the Community Health Assessment Team, right? What we're doing is building other first responder options. And so as we are reforming Portland Police itself, these other things are getting up to scale, right? Like Portland Street Response and the Community Health Assessment Team. And as they get up to scale, as we get these reports that the DOJ require us to get, we'll be able to figure out what's the appropriate size of police force, right? The police like to say it's based on population. Well, that's kind of ludicrous because we don't drop police when people move, right? We don't say, okay, now that we got less population, let's just get less police. No, it should be based on what does the community need to feel safe, right? And right now what the community needs is compassionate, empathetic responders when they call for help.
Thank you so much. Okay, Dale, I'm going to go to you next. I'm going to repeat the question for you. What is your response to the 2021 November vote that increased that police budget I mentioned earlier? Do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and reinvesting those dollars in non-police solutions to public safety?
Okay, to answer that one, that's really pretty easy. I think that in 2021, when they gave back the money, they did a good thing. I think that was the city council admitting that they'd made a mistake. And it's very important that that happens. As far as going forward and investing more money, I want to say no. I want to go with what Jo Ann is recommending. I do believe in the street response teams. I think we need to move away from the police. But I'm just questioning the timing because Portland is in a critical spot right now. And while I want Portland to be perfect, I'm not sure that we can just jump right in right now and just eliminate the police and go with our other ideas. So I think that the most important,
The police have not been eliminated.
Oh, I know.
Self-eliminated.
I know, but they've been reduced. And I think that before we did anything else with the police, before we take money, give money, anything we do, I think that we've put a person into that office as the police chief that lives in Portland, loves Portland, and knows what he's doing. And I think before any change should be made in our police officers, I think he should be the main voice at the table saying, this is what I need, this is why I need it. And explain it to the people because the politicians have got it so messed up that we don't trust the police anymore. But we should remember that 24/7, those officers will lay their lives down for each and every one of us. So I'm sorry that they have to be, because I would like a world where there was no violence. But that's not the world we live in. Guns are crazy right now. Kids have guns. Everybody has guns, and we have to address that. But I would like to see it go forward with whatever the police chief wants, and whatever he doesn't need goes straight into putting more nonviolent, unarmed police people on the streets. That is critical. That is a deterrent. And that is all that Portland needs to lower the crime rate, is a deterrent. But when that's not there, the criminals are just wild and happy. There's never been a better day in Portland for the criminals. They can commit a crime, go to jail, and be out in 12 hours. That's not a deterrent. That's an open door to say, come to Portland and take what you want. We're good. As long as you don't hurt anybody, it's all okay. And the sad part is that even if we were to say, we're not going to do that anymore, we're going to arrest every one of them, we can't. So we're really in a very, very, very bad spot because we're in a problem that we just can't get out of right now today. And so as to the money that's been taken and given back, I think that you gave back some of it. So that's a good thing. But I think going forward, we need to get the chief to sit down and say, this is the way we need to go. This is what will support me the best, because until we get crime under control in Portland, it's not a place that anybody wants to live. And that has to be the main priority that everybody is focused on. That and the people that are living on our street. Nothing else should matter right now, nothing. And we need everybody involved. That means the police chief, the officers on the ground. And it's like Chad said, these officers, they're human beings. And the stress that they are under every single day out there, when they're in a police chase, your adrenaline's up. They make mistakes, but they're human beings. And they're risking their whole life every time they go out there, because that one lady that made a mistake, she pulled a gun instead of a taser. Who at this table can say it was not an honest mistake? And so she's going to go to prison forever. And it could have been an honest mistake. It shouldn't have happened. None of them should ever happen. But I'm saying that these are human beings, and we rely too much on them and expect too much. In a dangerous situation like when the cop got killed running into his own house, that's nobody's fault. It's the reality of crime and criminals. And there's going to be bad things that happen. And it's sad, but we have to move forward and say, we're not going to let that happen again. There used to be slavery in America. There's not slavery anymore. We do learn, and we make up for the mistakes that we've made. So as we move forward, I think we just need to look at new directions like the police response without guns. I believe 100% that we need more people on the street to deter the crime so it doesn't happen. Because Jo Ann is right. The police aren't there to stop the crime. They're there to deal with it once you've done it. And we got to stop it from happening before it's our stuff that's being stolen.
You know, I hear over and over and over again from community members, when they call the police for help, the police say, we've been defunded. We can't come because we don't have enough staff.
That's unacceptable.
It is unacceptable to me
It's also
as
not
well.
true. We haven't actually got
And it's
rid of.
absolutely not true. We have over 800 sworn officers, and I continue to ask daily, we're actually, and they say we only have 200 available for patrol. Well, I want to know what the other 600 do.
But we have like 560,000 people in Portland or something like that. Don't you think that number is grossly way under?
Well,
800 sworn officers to protect over 500,000 people?
Actually, it
Like,
has
come on.
nothing to do with the number of people who live in communities. There are communities with significantly more people with significantly less police. I will give you, oh gosh. The city will come back to me, but there is a perfect police force in this country, and it was created because they got the chance to start from scratch, right? And what you would see is very few of the officers are armed, and in fact, de-escalation training is the norm.
And I agree with that, having unarmed officers, okay? But when we're so, I feel like we're so understaffed that all this overtime that they're putting in, we're burning out officers.
Well, I do want to add another thing. We've always been understaffed for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
and it's sometimes interesting that we are saying we're in the crisis that we're in now because we don't have enough police. But what about 2019? We didn't have enough police then. 2018, we didn't.
Right.
I mean, the settlement in 2014 clearly said we didn't, and it was a very different city. Whether you agree, like myself, that it's still we need to reimagine the entire thing, or not. But I do think there is something to being mindful that we've always been at a deficit of the amount. There's always been open seats, but there is something that you mentioned.
When
too.
I showed
Oh,
up
go
in
please.
2019, sorry for cutting me
No, you're
off.
good.
When I showed up in 2019, those 50 positions have been carried over 5 years. The 44 that we cut, every budget because that was the slush fund. That's how police got to buy the stuff that city council didn't support. That's how they got to support an overbloated overtime budget. But you say we need more officers. Officers are still working for private industry in their uniform because the union, before I got there, the city council allowed the union to decide whether or not they could make extra money in their uniform. I didn't vote for that, but guess what? It's still in the union contract, right? So when you keep telling me the police need more money, no, they don't. They've always had enough money. The question is, how do we spend that money and whether we're getting a return on investment that we're supposed to get when we put that kind of money into a public servant's position.
But the more public servants you have, like the different groups you have, that's more, so you're separating everything farther out. Why not?
No,
Why not extending branches of the police bureau
Absolutely
itself?
not true. I
You know,
like
so it's
the
all
effort.
ran under the police chief,
Well, no,
and
it's not.
there's a direction and control.
today.
Because right now there is no direction in Portland.
Today-
They're saying we're gonna come up with this group, and this group's gonna volunteer and do this,
I can
and
tell you-
there's no direction.
I can
so
tell you
it's
what really
everywhere,
is
spread
happening.
out.
I can tell you what's happening, or you can tell me what you think is happening, and we can do both, right?
What I can see is,
well, let me just tell you,
my opinion is what I see.
We have a community safety director who is responsible for all the first responder bureaus now. His name is Mike Myers. I helped hire him, and he used to work for me.
Fire, right?
Yeah, he used to be my fire commissioner, and then he was my Bureau of Emergency Management commissioner. And I trust this guy to be a visionary thinker, which he's done all over the world, right? So it's not the police chief who is now leading the effort. It is someone who understands community safety. It's not just police. It is all the things that make a community safe.
Right, but right now we're talking about like right now it's not
Right
working.
now,
Nothing is working. Like everything we keep throwing stuff, we're just continuously just throwing money. It's going to go away because we throw money.
Respectfully
Oh yeah.
And
I respect that too.
No, I can understand
but
why you don't think it's working.
my view is coming from people throughout the community because I listen to members of the community,
do
which
I.
I feel the current commissioners don't listen to the community. I've tried reaching out to the commissioners' offices and heard nothing.
I did as well. I sent several letters and were totally ignored, which is why I'm here.
When the young girl was killed last summer downtown,
the
waiting for
high
food,
school girl
you know,
at
18
Grant
years
High School,
old,
yes.
and when the mayor comes out the next day, says we're going to have police officers downtown enforcing, you know, have a presence, and 2 weeks later, we took some friends. I had a friend come from Dallas. We took him downtown. We stayed down there until 3 a.m. because we went to the bars and then we went to the food trucks. Didn't see one police officer till I got back to the Pearl District outside of our building. Right. So I called. I sent emails to all of the current commissioners and even the news outlets and the mayor, and I didn't get one response back. And when I had mentioned in my email, I says, you know, as a middle-aged white male, it's apparent to me that this is racism. If it was a little blonde white girl, there would have been so many police officers down throughout that entire area, and there still currently would be, you know? So, but to get no response from anybody from the city, that's unacceptable.
So,
not even an automated email.
I will tell you that I never
no.
respond to chain letters because I believe when people write to me, they write to Commissioner Jo Ann Hardesty's office. When people send me a letter that's copied every news outlet, everybody in elected office.
But that puts you out of touch
everybody
from
in
what the
no, it doesn't.
community-
I want to reel us back in a little. bit. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the back and forth. Oh yeah, I was enjoying it, but we got some few questions. So I want to get us to our question number 3 because we touched it. But I do want for the folks kind of watching to do some research on a few things that we heard that we don't have time to dive into. The first is to dive into that DOJ settlement and learn a little bit more about the history of why that happened and particularly the disproportionate excessive force and over-policing on black folks. As someone who runs a black organization, I have to mention that. We also heard a little bit and name-dropped a little bit around slavery. Slavery has not ended. There is quite a lot of data to support that our prison system is still carrying on that thing. So that tradition. I would recommend as well to do some research on the prison industrial complex, read some books, and do some background because for some they might believe that, but as a black woman, I'm going to tell you that's not always the case for all of us. It's not true.